Welcome everyone. Let's begin our lesson for today by going over our learning goals and success criteria. First, what are we learning? We're learning how to perform mathematical operations on rational and irrational numbers, and how to determine which number set a number belongs to after operations are performed on rational and irrational numbers. How are we learning it? Through the rational and irrational number sense notes and the rational and irrational number sense assignment. When can we use this? To understand how number sets are affected by mathematical operations throughout the remainder of this course, and to perform simple calculations such as a budget by recognizing boundaries of numbers to determine if adding the items in your budget will stay within your income amount. How do we know we learned it? By getting a score of 4 on the rational and irrational number sense assignment. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. We will begin by going over our learning goals and success criteria. While we do that, you'll fill out your Get It Started. Once you've completed your Get It Started, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. Next, we'll do the rational and irrational number sense notes, and then I'll give you time to complete the rational and irrational number sense assignment on Desmos. Once you've completed the assignment, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. At the end of class, we'll go back over our learning goals and success criteria while you fill out your Before You Go. Your only homework for tonight is to continue working on the reasoning with Irrational Number Study Guide and any incomplete assignments that you may have. Let's take a look now at the rational and irrational number sense notes. Our notes begin with the learning goals and success criteria. So we need to talk first about what are the different types of true statements. So the first kind is always true, meaning that there is no situation in which the statement is not true. For instance, the sun will come out today. Well, there's different variations of how bright the sun might be, but the sun does come out every day. That's always true. So there are no examples that can make the statement not true. So that's always true. Then there's sometimes true. Sometimes true means that there are examples of it being true and examples of it not being true. An example of this would be, it's going to rain today. Well, could it rain today? It absolutely could, but it also might not. So sometimes it rains, sometimes it doesn't. So there are examples that make it true and counterexamples that make it false. And the last one is never true. And never true means that there are no examples when this could be true. For instance, the sun will not come out today. Well, that's never true. The sun always does come out. So examples of true statements, we have the sun comes up in the morning. Is that sometimes true, always true, or never true? Well, we should know that no matter what, the sun always does come out. So that is always true. It will be raining tomorrow. Well, tomorrow it could rain, it might not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So that is sometimes true. And the temperature tomorrow will be 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, it might feel like 200 degrees. It might feel really hot, but it will never actually get to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is never true. Now let's look at some mathematical examples of true statements. So quadratics, meaning the U-shapes, increase infinitely. Is that sometimes true, always true, or never true? Well, we know that the graph forms a U like this, but it could also go down like this. So it won't always increase infinitely. Sometimes it will also decrease infinitely. So this one is sometimes true. Now this one says absolute values have negative y values. Remember, absolute values form the v, and if we take the absolute value of x, it's always going to be positive, right? So it can never have any negative values, so this is never true. And the last one says linear functions have both positive and negative y values. Well, as long as it forms a straight line, it will always be true. It will always go below the y-axis and above the y-axis. So no matter which direction it's going, so this one is always true. Now a couple words that you'll need to know for today's assignment. The first one is sum. A sum is the result of adding. So we're adding two values together. The result is the sum. Difference means we're subtracting. Product means we're multiplying. And quotient means that we are dividing. So here's some examples of what we're talking about. So it says the sum of a rational number and a rational number is rational. And we need to decide, is that sometimes true, always true, or never true? Well, if we add a rational number and a rational number, so that's a fraction and a fraction. If we add two fractions together, will we ever get anything that's not a fraction? Well, we know from closure that we'll always get a fraction in return. So this one is always true. It will always be rational. Now here we have a rational number and an irrational number. We're taking the sum, so we're adding those together. So if we add a rational and an irrational, the result will be irrational. Well, so that means if we take a fraction and add it to, let's say, pi, well, they're not like terms, so we can't actually add them together. So the pi will always be there. So it will always be irrational. So this one is always true. Now the sum of an irrational number and an irrational number is irrational. So let's say we add pi and square root of 2. Well, that's going to be an irrational number. So that works. But what if we were to add, let's say, pi and negative pi? Well, that gives us 0, which is not irrational. So therefore, this is sometimes true. Let's talk now about how to sign in to Desmos to complete your work. So what we're going to do is you're going to click on the link to go to the assignment, and it should take you to a page that looks kind of like this. And right here where it says sign in with Google, we're going to click there. And it's going to pop up with our email accounts. You're going to click on your school email account, and it should already have you logged in because you should have already been logged in using Google Classroom. From there, I'm just going to click start the activity, and it will take me into the assignment and allow me to begin. So that's how you will log in to Desmos using Google. Let's take a look now at the rational and irrational number sense assignment. The assignment begins with the learning goals and success criteria. If we scroll down, there's a link here that takes us to the Desmos activity. We'll go ahead and click on that link, and it takes us to a page that looks like this. We'll go ahead and click start the activity. The activity begins with the learning goals and success criteria. We'll go ahead and click next. And we're going to use these as our number bank. 5 log 5, 1/2, 0, square root of 2, negative square root of 2, 1 over square root of 2, pi, and log 2. So we're just going to use these as examples as we try to decide whether some of these statements are true or not. So we'll go ahead and click next. And it says experiment with the sums and products of two numbers from the following list to decide whether this is true or not. So it says the sum of a rational number and a rational number is rational. So we could experiment with some of these, but what we really want to think about is there any way I can add two fractions together and get something that's not a fraction? And we may be able to get a whole number, but a whole number, remember, can be written as a fraction. So is there any way we can get pi or square root of 2 or something like that by adding two fractions together? Well, we should recognize that there's not. So this one is true, that the sum of a rational and a rational is rational, and that is always true. So we're going to put always true. So we'll answer that for each of these. We'll answer and decide whether it's always true, sometimes true, or never true. So we'll answer each of the questions. Once you finish this, you'll go back to your Google form, and once you've answered all of these questions, you'll go back to your Google form and click next. This will take you to your before you go. Go ahead and fill out your before you go and then submit your work on Google Classroom.